Miss, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I just got the book. When are we gonna be able to use it? The textbook.
You should have already read chapters 1 and 2 for tonight.
Oh, I forgot. It's because it barely got here today. That's
Yeah,
why
no, you'll be fine. So next week, make sure to read chapters 3 and 4.
3 and 4? Okay.
Yeah.
I
would
read it tonight.
1 and 2 since you're already going to get the majority of it tonight.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Hey, Norman, how are you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm doing fine.
Oh, good. Yeah, that thing that you emailed me about, we're talking about tonight. So that's why I didn't respond. Since I knew that we were going to talk about it tonight anyways.
Oh, okay. Thank you though for answering.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, Alexander, Anna, and Isabel. I'm so glad that you guys made it tonight, and I hope that you've been having a really good day so far. Hello, Marissa. Good evening. And Cora's here. I'm glad you made it, Cora. Welcome, Liliana. I'm glad that you made it. Hello, Mika, or Micah. Do you want to go by Micah? I don't know how to say your name yet. Sorry.
No, yeah, it's Micah.
Okay, I thought so. I was like, wait, Mika doesn't sound right. Well, I'm glad that you made it.
Thank you, thank you. No issues this time.
Awesome. Yeah, the more you get used to it, the easier it gets. Trust me, I've been doing it like every day now.
Yeah.
They just added new features today, and I'm like, dang it, I just did get used to it, and now you're adding stuff.
Something new every time.
Yeah, today they added backgrounds, so you can like change your background.
Oh, okay. I'm wondering, is it just me that can't see anybody or?
No, everyone's got their camera off right now.
Oh, okay.
It's not you, it's us. Yeah, so now you should be able to at least see me. I have my camera on.
Okay. There you are.
Yep. So we are still missing a lot of people. That's pretty typical for a night class. So we get people that come in pretty late.
Oh,
Whenever I used to teach this class in person, face to face, we would have people show up like a half hour after class started a lot of time. Just because everyone's working.
yeah.
I get
And
it.
it's a 3-hour class too.
Yeah,
Almost.
3-hour long class almost. So it's pretty long. It's pretty rare when we actually take up all 3 hours. But sometimes it does happen. I try not to just because it gets a little monotonous
Yeah.
in a 3-hour long class, and kind of by the end you'll end up forgetting what you even went over. So I try and make it a little bit more bearable. Hey Brock, how are
Hello. Sorry, microphone.
you? I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Doing fine. Doing well. Just
Good.
sorting out stuff and trying to reorganize and make sure the next time I'm not like rushing to finish this.
Oh no, I get it. And we're still waiting for a lot of people to log on, so you're okay.
Good to know. I was trying to access like the other groups, the Google Slides. Like, can I do that, or is that
We're
Snoopy?
going to talk about that at the end of class.
Okay, all right.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to give you guys probably almost an hour's worth of time to work on it tonight.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll have time to work out all of the issues if there are any. And that's going to be probably a common thing that we're going to do for the next few weeks until it's time to turn it in, is I'll give you guys some time to work on it in class. By all means, work on it outside of class too. That just makes it all the better. But yeah, we'll talk about it at the end.
Okay.
Okay, well, the majority of people are here except for a few. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I am recording the meeting, and some of you noticed that I linked your recordings to a YouTube channel. So if you look under the announcements page in Canvas, there's a new announcement that says, here's the link to all the recordings. It's on a YouTube channel, and I'm going to keep doing that. So if you do happen to run late one day, or if for whatever reason you accidentally miss a session, or you just want to review material again before a quiz, those are all going to be available to you on that YouTube channel for you to access and watch as many times as you want, although I don't know why you would want to watch them more than once. They aren't that entertaining to watch this going on. But hey, if you're into that, why not? So it's kind of sad I had to make a giant checklist for tonight. It doesn't mean we're going over a lot of stuff. It just means that I'm that scatterbrained right now. So tonight we're going to be going over 2 main topics. Those topics are going to focus around the question of what is art and what is the purpose of art. So we are going to be focusing on chapters 1 and 2. If you read chapters 1 and 2, awesome. That means that you are going to be able to understand very quickly what we're covering tonight. And you're probably going to be able to add to the conversation, which I appreciate. If you didn't read chapters 1 and 2, please try and read chapters 3 and 4 for next week. It just makes the class go a lot smoother, and we can get more out of the class time and the class sessions, and we can have better conversations too. This is a conversation-based class. So like I think last week I called on people. This week I will be doing the same thing. But let me start off. The first thing that we are going to be doing is something called a Padlet. Some of you might have done this before. If not, you'll be fine. I promise you will be all right. So I have made a little Padlet. Padlets are a little web page with basically Post-it notes on them. And the Padlet has several questions on it. I'm going to paste the link to the Padlet in the chat section. All you have to do is click on that link and it will take you to the questions page. Those questions are going to go ahead and get us thinking about the topic of what is art with some basic general questions. They're all opinion-based. Your opinions can't be wrong because they're yours. So don't feel worried or overthink too much about your answers. If someone does not have access to the chat function, I'm also going to be posting a QR code on the screen in a second. If you don't know how to use a QR code, all you have to do is go to your phone's camera and scan it. Do that.
For some reason, it's not letting me open the chat.
Well, that's why I also posted a QR code. So you can just take your phone's camera and open your camera and scan the QR code. A little drop down should pop out from the top and it'll take you to that same Padlet.
And this is just our own opinion of.
Yeah, they're all your own opinion, except for the one that says the book. There is an actual definition in the book. If you know it, great. If you don't, it's okay.
Are we doing this now?
Yeah. And by the way, all of these are anonymous, so whatever you write, no one's going to know who you are. Someone's already typing, which is awesome. The fun thing about Padlet is that you can also like someone else's post. So if you agree with someone, you can like their post. It's a way to express emotions, feeling, and imagination. Yes, it is. Someone's already figured out how to add an image. Awesome. You're right. It is not just drawing. It's also literature, theater, music, dance, poetry. All of those things are art.
Are you supposed to be able to see your own?
No, not usually. You can usually just see other people's.
Okay, I was just making sure. I didn't want mine to not upload or anything.
Art is a way to express our creativity or express ourselves, a way to express ourselves, a lot of expressing, which we're going to challenge that tonight because sometimes art can be more than just expression. But that's common. Like my morning classes, we did the same activity last week and almost everyone mentions expressing. A visual representation of sending messages. Yeah, I like that one a lot. Someone else hearted that one too. I really like that one. Human creativity, skill, and imagination. Yeah. Art is the ability to use creative skills in either painting, sculptures, or theater based off their imagination. Yeah, but it can be more than just those things. There's a whole lot of things that can be considered art. Like there was one lady in my morning class that was arguing that parenting was an art, and I did not disagree with that at all. Because that takes skill. Photos are examples that you see every day. Yeah, music, photos, reading. People often forget advertisements and commercials are actually art. Like people actually go to graphic design school to learn how to make those. But yeah,
I feel like art is such a broad term, like it can be used for,
extremely broad, yeah.
like anybody can have an idea of art.
Why we're doing this activity, because it can be such a broad term. Like the young girl, because I teach a high school class of this too, and the young girls were like, well, makeup's in art, clothes in art. I'm like, yeah, they are. You're not wrong. Pretty much anything can be an art.
Can I get the like with the website on my computer, or is that only phone wise?
If you follow the link in the chat, then yeah, you can get it on your computer.
Okay. For some reason I can't get it on here.
Some people don't have access to the chat, and we were talking to IT about it, and it has to do with the domain that you're using. So if you're not using your Midland College Outlook account, then you're not going to have access to all of the functions. Because I know the high school class that I do teach, they like to use their Midland ISD account, and it doesn't let them access anything.
I think that was my major thing too, because I have like a personal account, I have a work account, I have a school account, and they all kind of have been conflicting with each other.
Together, and they keep changing from one another. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I keep having to make sure that mine's on the right one. Because I tried to log into this meeting and it didn't give me video or microphone, and I was like, wait, I'm on my personal account. That's not going to work. So last week we did a Kahoot. You guys didn't like the Kahoot. I didn't really like the Kahoot either. It was kind of a pain in the butt. This is a lot easier. Last week seems like forever ago. So many good pictures.
Not bad. I got kicked off.
I like that one. I was just reading an article today about art being produced during the Black Lives Matter movement. It's really interesting. And I'm actually going to reference that later on tonight too. Whoever posted that, I don't know who did. I don't need to know who did. We are being anonymous. Okay, if you're still writing, please by all means keep finishing your thoughts. I enjoy reading them all, and I will probably go back and take more time reading them later on tonight because that's what I like to do. Taking a walk is art. That's like the most relaxing art, taking a walk. But yeah, we've pretty much determined that art is an extremely broad term, which was what this particular activity was for. There are tons of reasons why artists make art. The most common one that we see today is expression, but there are other reasons which we're going to talk about when we get to the purposes of art. There are tons of different ways to illustrate art. That one always pops up, the Sistine Chapel one every time. We might have a Michelangelo fan. But yeah, and art itself can apply to a lot of different topics. Because art is such a creative thing, and every human has the ability to create and be creative. It just depends on what they personally consider to be art. So like I said, if you're still writing on that, by all means continue. But I'm gonna go ahead and I guess I kind of already, no, I'm on the wrong chapter, that's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So the first topic that we are discussing is focusing on the idea and the question of what is art, which was why I wanted to do that little activity. Your book gives a very formal definition of what art is, and I don't know, maybe because I'm a little bit indecisive, I don't with such a formal definition. And it's very constrictive, which I understand why they did that, because in an art appreciation class, in any art history class or art class that you might take at the college level, you are focusing on formal art, primarily two-dimensional art, and you will occasionally look at sculpture and architecture. But primarily you're looking at formal art. What I mean by formal art is art produced by people that went to school to get a degree in art. So what I'm trying to say in like these vague, spacey terms is that art can be tons of things. And by all means, continue thinking that it's anything that you want it to be because it's such a broad term. But this particular class is focusing on formal art. Occasionally, we will get the opportunity to look at more informal art made by people that are not professionally trained artists, which I enjoy looking at. But the art world itself is very, I don't know. I hate to say it, but they're very closed-minded about letting people into it that aren't trained professionally and using the particular terms and styles that they deem appropriate. They're slowly starting to venture out of their little closed-minded bubble. And I feel like these different movements and this culture that's slowly breeding in the world today is forcing them to broaden their horizons a little bit more. but they are still very formal and punctual and sometimes snotty. And this is coming from someone that specializes in art, so that got a degree with all of those people. So yeah, but they are getting better. One example of that is that we're going to talk about in a second. They don't consider crafts to be art. By crafts, I mean things like quilting or stitching or metalworking. Those things are oftentimes not considered art, but in real world terms, most people would consider things like quilting or welding to be an art. So yeah, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But the first work that we're going to look at in this class is Janet Eckelman's Her Secret is Patience. This is a fun artwork because it's a public artwork, meaning that it was paid for in part by people's tax dollars. People are pretty particular about what they like to spend tax dollars on, as we know very well in Midland, Texas. We like to argue about what our tax money is spent on all of the time. But fun fact is that any public building, such as a federal building, a government building, or any public owned space is required to put a percentage of money down for art or artwork. This particular piece that we're about to look at is in a public space. So a part of the money that was paid for to make that public space, a park in particular, did have to go towards artwork. However, this particular artwork went way over the percentage that Phoenix, Arizona actually had to pay, and it costs, $5 to $6 million to make. Micah's the only person I can see, and his eyes they went really big. Yeah, so it's people's tax dollars. It cost several $million to pay this artist to make this work. It's supposed to represent a saguaro cactus. This is what it looks like during the day. Micah's facial expressions are great. Makes me feel like someone's actually there. It's great. So let's ask Isabel. Isabel, can you unmute and tell us if you think you'd be okay spending several $1 million worth of tax dollars to make this?
I don't think I would, because I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah. Majority of Phoenix residents were not happy because they were like Isabel, and they were like, that I don't know what that's supposed to be. So it is a large sculpture. It's 100 feet by 100 feet. It is composed of a bunch of wires and lighting and some steel hoops. Someone just emailed me. It's probably someone that couldn't get into it's someone that couldn't get into the class. Really? You're going to wait a half hour later and then tell me that you couldn't get into the class? Wow. Okay, 1 second. 1 second, guys. Let me fix them. I'm slowly becoming IT. But hey. Okay, sorry about that. So like I was saying, a majority of people were very upset about this. the park itself, like it's right in front of that public space, which is basically that's like an entrance to their train station area. Because Phoenix, Arizona does have, well, not really trains. Well, they do have trains, but it's like a tram. It's a very small little public transportation thing. And the sculpture is right beside that. But like I was saying, people were really upset about it. It's supposed to look like a cactus. Obviously, it's an abstract interpretation of a cactus. It's important to keep in mind as we go throughout this class that people see things differently and interpret things in different ways. So for example, Liliana might look at a cloud and see a dog, and I might look at that same exact cloud and see a mountain with snow on it. Everyone sees things differently. We all pick up different things. So this is Janet Eckelman's interpretation of a saguaro cactus and what she sees when she sees a saguaro cactus. But the kicker is that finally, when the sculpture opened, this was what it actually made. So it's actually a really gorgeous light up sculpture that's in the tones of a sunset that you would see in Phoenix, Arizona. The art piece itself tends to gather a lot of tourists, which will usually go buy dinner in the downtown restaurants and then go by the park and see this, which is supposedly the rumor, but I went to see this at that same park, and that park is littered with homeless people, so I wouldn't want to spend a majority of my time in the dark with a bunch of homeless people. But hey, that's just me.
Yeah, it's really nice, like at nighttime, but
really
during the day it looks ugly. I don't know.
I know. Like during the day, you don't really even, like when you're driving by on that main road, you don't really notice it. But at night, it's super pretty, and it's huge, and it's nice. But yeah. So, but still, despite that, a lot of people weren't happy just because people don't like spending money on stuff, which I get. People in Midland don't even like spending money on stuff. So, I mean, to each his own. So, what is art? Art generally refers to a lot of different things, but more specifically things like music, theater, dance, literature, visual arts, poetry. In this class, we're going to be focusing on those visual arts. So drawing, painting, sculpture, film, architecture, design, and photography are the specific ones that we're actually going to be delving into. But like we mentioned earlier, it can go way beyond those things, and it is an extremely broad term. However, like I mentioned, we are going to be focusing on formal art in this class. Which once again, we're focusing on the visual formal arts. So your book uses the actual definition of work of art being the visual expression of an idea or experience formed with skill through the use of a medium. That's like your book's specific definition. But like I said, I feel like art can be more than that, but I understand why they did that. Is just to put a little cap on things. It uses the word medium in that definition. A medium is an artistic word that we're going to use a lot in this course. So it's good to become familiar with it now. Medium is just something that you use to make art. So whatever particular material an artist is using, be it paint or a pencil or watercolors or a camera, that is used to make that art. If you're using more than one medium, so let's say that you are using pencil and watercolor, then you are using media as in plural. So particular artists usually have certain medium that they just prefer to use. Everyone has their own preference. Occasionally, artists will branch out from the one that they're most known for and practice with others just because we they get bored using the same thing all the time. But that particular medium is not usually chosen just willy-nilly. They're going to choose the medium that best exemplifies the work that they're trying to compose. Such as the Eckelmann work that we just looked at. She used a flexible netting in that sculpture so that it would respond to the wind around it. Why would she want something natural to respond to the wind? Well, it's supposed to look like, well, her version of a cactus. Cacti are natural things that occur in the world. She's trying to make it as natural as possible, and responding to the wind makes it less stiff. Another fancy term that we use in this class is mixed media. So that is using a combination of different materials. Did you have a question, Micah?
No, I did not.
Okay. So mixed media is just using a combination of different materials. Usually instead of using like just media as plural form itself, most people would call it mixed media. So let's say we were using like tape and paint and highlighters or Post-it notes or something like that and combine them all together, that would be mixed media. And don't think I'm crazy when I say using highlighters and Post-it notes to make art, because I have seen it done before.
Or like add sound, like a that
Yeah.
to it, like.
I was gonna say I've seen something like that before.
Yeah. I saw in Fort Worth, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, there was an artist that made huge canvas works just covered in Post-it notes of different colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, this is.
They got a lot of time on their hands.
Yeah, but hey, whatever. And like today in my morning class, we looked at someone that put painter's tape on the wall in random lines and called it art. But hey, whatever. Whatever works for you, man. Whatever is your way of expressing yourself. I'm not going to judge. Okay, speaking of judging, artists in the art world like to not include craft in formal art, like I mentioned. So one of these images on this slide is considered to be art and the other one is considered to be craft. Erica, can you unmute and tell us which one's which? She's trying. She's trying, but we can't hear. Let's ask someone else then. Oh no. Anna, can you tell us which one's which?
I think that I will go for the elephant.
Yeah, so typically in art terms, the elephant would be considered the artwork and the gun would be considered craft. You may think that the gun is more visually appealing than the elephant. I've had a lot of people argue that, and that's fine. I might personally agree with that as well, but the gun itself is considered a craft. The person that made this most likely, well, this is probably made by a machine, but the person that designed the gun most likely did not go to formal art school and end up in galleries and museums. But the guy that made the elephant, which by the way is made out of a bunch of rifles and gun parts, did go to art school and get formal training and is now showing these sculptures in museums and galleries. So once again, this is made using various gun parts. Can anyone tell us, this is open to anyone that's willing to speak, tell us what the artist is trying to express or say with that elephant?
I think he's probably talking about like, not animal cruelty, but I guess just like hunting, like wildlife and.
Yeah, so he was making a statement on the ivory trade. People were hunting elephants just for their tusks because they could make a lot of money selling the ivory. Typically, a good way to tell the difference between art and craft, sometimes this doesn't work because a lot of times quilt makers will put stories in their quilts. But one good way to tell a difference is that usually a formal piece of art will have some sort of story, statement, or expression behind it. But sometimes that doesn't work. Most of the time it does. If you're trying to tell the difference. So your book also gives us a definition on what the idea of creativity is. Creativity is the ability to bring forth and give something new value or new relevance. And we're now going to look at the 5 steps to define creativity, which we're going to practice applying to artworks in a second. So those steps that define creativity or determine whether or not something is creative are associating, questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting. Before we actually try and apply these to artworks, though, we should probably understand what these words mean, because I feel like that could probably help everyone out. So what does it mean to associate, or what does the word associating mean? I almost said it.
Like finding something that goes with the artwork, like the guy did with the elephant, like he used guns to portray
So
the
that is
ivory.
the best example I've ever heard, and you're the first person to ever do that. So associating is putting 2 different topics together to make a new thing. So that artist took his frustration with hunting and combined it with art. Another thing that he did was he combined or associated guns and a sculpture. So associating is just combining or relating several different things together to make a new thing. Norman, what does it mean to question something?
What was that?
What does it mean to question? What does the word question mean?
To question why some. I really have no answer for that.
Hard. Can someone help him out? It's hard to think of that definition without using the word in it.
Maybe like the questioning behind it and like the reasoning behind the.
So you're thinking about it and thinking about the reason behind it. Yeah. So you're contemplating the norm, basically, is what questioning would be. Good job. Next one's easy, observing. Rosa, can you unmute and tell us what it means to observe something?
For me, it's like something crazy.
Do what? You broke up for a second.
For me, it's something crazy.
Yeah. So it can be. When I think of the word observing, I think of watching something. Watching it a lot. The 4th version of creativity is networking. Eileen, can you unmute and tell us what it means to network? That one's a harder one. Can someone help out?
Could be like
Trying to like
showing
find
other people.
information about it, maybe.
Yeah, so you're both on the right track, and I feel like we've
Sorry,
find the 2.
wouldn't want to unmute.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So networking is basically meeting with other people and discussing different things, sharing ideas, learning new things. And experimenting just means to try stuff over and over and over again. A lot of people just assume that artists make artwork right off the top of their heads. It takes a lot of prep work, a lot of sketching, a lot of practicing, a lot of writing notes and figuring out what you're going to do. With photography in particular, I know today a lot of people are familiar with like Instagram selfies. People don't usually post like the first thing that they take a picture of, especially those people that are Instagram famous. They take like hundreds of selfies and they just pick the best one. Artists are the same way, particularly photographers. They will take hundreds and thousands of pictures of images and then choose the best one. So that's another form of experimenting, is just constant practice. Okay, so now let's see if we can find a way to apply these 5 traits of creativity. And we're going to practice on Robin Rohde's He Got Game. So He Got Game is a bunch of photographs of Robin Rohde doing really, really low-tech photographs of him laying on the ground with a chalk drawing of a basketball hoop and him making impossibly crazy trick shots. So let's try that out. Here is the series of photographs. And let's see if we can apply our idea of creativity to that. Can someone unmute and tell us what the first trait of creativity is? Just the word, just remind us.
Association.
Association. Thank you. Marissa, can you unmute and tell us maybe some of the 2 or 3 things that he's combining or associating that wouldn't normally go together?
Can you reword the question for me?
Yeah, for sure. So associating is our first trait of creativity. If we remember, associating means to combine a couple of different ideas or topics. So what are 2 different topics that normally wouldn't go together that Rohde has combined here?
Honestly, don't know.
Okay, can someone help her out?
Maybe the shooting the balls in difficult ways, impossible shots.
So he's combined his imagination and creativity with basketball trick shots. That's a new one. No one's ever said that before. What's another way that he is associated? Because there's a few.
He's kind of sharing his passion with like basketball and art.
Yeah.
And putting them together.
Combined basketball and photography, which that's the one that I always get because it's like the most basic. When analyzing these artworks, I wouldn't think too deeply if I was you guys, because most often the answer is pretty surface level. Let's see. Selena, can you unmute and tell us the second trait of creativity?
Questioning.
Questioning, thank you. So questioning means challenging the norm, how things are normally done. Alba, can you unmute and tell us how Rohde is questioning something with this series of photographs?
I mean, I guess just the ball in general. Like, I mean, I'm kind of curious about that. My brother was saying something about art filming. That's possible too.
Can you repeat that? Sorry. Someone else emailed me saying they couldn't get into the class.
No, I mean, I guess like for me, it's more like the ball and stuff. And I was talking to my brother about it, and we're talking about that. It looks like art filming as well. It's just kind of like the different angles that he has with and stuff.
So specifically, the thing that I always think of, and you and I are on the same track of thinking is that he's basically questioning how normal basketball would be played. He's laying on the ground. Normally, basketball is not played laying on the ground. He's also questioning the usage of photography because he is taking an aerial shot looking at the ground. Normally, when you're taking a picture, you don't take a picture of the ground. Just normally. But there are a lot of artists. There's another one called Vic Muniz that we're going to look at later on this semester that gets up on like cherry pickers and takes pictures from the cherry picker of sculptures of garbage that he's laid out below hand. And they look really cool. Can someone unmute and tell us the third trait of creativity?
Observing.
Observing. So observing means watching. What did Rhodey probably watch a lot of before he decided to do this? Don't think too hard.
Had to be basketball.
He watched a lot of basketball before he decided to make this image. And the next trait of creativity is
Networking.
networking. So this goes along with the last one. If you watched a lot of basketball, he probably also talked to some like street ballers and networked with them. He probably also networked with several different photographers to discuss his ideas. Frequently, artists, if they're going to start a big project, they will talk with their peers and like feel out if it's a good idea or not. And that's another form of networking. And the last trait of creativity is experimenting. Can someone unmute and tell us how he experimented here?
There's probably a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
Initially.
That's specifically the way he experimented. Yeah. So he did a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error. He took several thousand shots just to get 12 photographs that he liked. Lots of practicing with the layouts and the positioning of himself and the ball throughout the images. Lots and lots of trial and error. Okay. So we're going to keep working on our traits of creativity with this particular sculpture. So this is a picture of a sculpture, just to get that out in the open, because a lot of times people think that this is supposed to be a photograph. And I guess that's just because we just looked at a photograph. So this is a sculpture called Candy Spill by Felix Gonzalez Torres. It weighs, specifically, this one in particular weighs 179 pounds. We're going to read about one in a second that weighs, I think, 176. The viewer or the museum goer gets to interact with this particular sculpture by taking a piece of candy. It's kind of interesting. For some reason, my morning classes always love this sculpture because they like the idea of being able to touch it and to take a piece and eat it. But my night classes tend to hate this sculpture because they don't think it's art. I always find that interesting. What do you guys think?
It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it kind of reminds me of the gum wall that they have in Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of, it's opposite, but I mean, they chew their gum and they stick it on the wall, which is kind of gross. But
yeah, a little gross, but yeah. Okay. Hang on, let me reply to this person that can't get in. I swear, I tell them to call the help desk and have them walk it through how to get in because they can't figure out how to use their Outlook email.
Mhm.
And they don't call the help desk. They just tell me for the 5th time that they can't get in. probably still won't be able to get in. I don't know why I even waste my time. But hey, whatever. I tell them, I'm like, practice ahead of time so that you can call IT if you have issues. But no one listens to me. Sorry, mini rant there. And they still can't get in. Surprise, surprise. Okay. So if you don't like this piece, you won't offend me. You're not going to be the first person, and you won't be the last person that doesn't like it. But hey, this is considered like contemporary masterpiece. But let's go ahead and analyze it with our 5 traits of creativity. So let's see what we can do with association and associating. Who can unmute and tell us what things Felix Gonzalez Torres might be associating here?
Probably has a sweet tooth.
So candy and his love of candy, possibly. Art.
Maybe showing like how the amount of candy we eat in our lifetime or our, I don't know, yearly basis, something like that.
I like that route that you're going on there, Brock. There is a deeper meaning to it. Yeah, you're right. It's not that, but there is a deeper meaning. What were you going to say, Alba?
Oh, sorry. No, I was just looking at it, and I feel like the different colors and how they can be combined, type of thing.
Yeah.
Like
colors
and the greens.
I'm kind of glad you mentioned the colors because I always forget to talk about them. The colors are playful and fun colors, usually associated with like children and candy and bright things and which just gives the piece a little bit of a deeper meaning, which we'll talk about in a second. What else might weigh 179 pounds besides that pile of candy that exists in real life?
What was the question?
What else might weigh 179 pounds in real life besides that pile of candy?
A person?
Yeah, a person. That's exactly right. He is associating candy with a person's weight, a very specific person, which we'll talk about in a second. He's also associating candy and art. Typically, candy is not used to make artworks. So yeah. Let's look at how this piece is an example of, I'm trying to think, observing.
Maybe how if you see a candy, you have to like grab it and eat it.
Yeah. So that's, I would say that's trying to think. Yeah, it could be.
Maybe all of the different colors.
The different colors, possibly.
Yeah, maybe he was like observing all the different colors, and maybe like that caught his eye with the gummy bears.
So let's see if I give you a little bit more information, if it makes this a little bit easier for you. So there's a reason why this weighs the same weight as 179 pounds, and it does represent a specific person. So Felix Gonzalez Torres is what's known as a minimalist, meaning he doesn't go into great depth, and it's very minimal objects that he uses for his artwork. So very simple. He also has a very whimsical and humanistic side to him. and is extremely influenced by pop art, which we'll talk about what pop art is later on tonight. This particular piece is considered an installation, so it exists in a space and people can interact with it. And it is what he considered a portrait of his deceased partner named Ross Laycock. Laycock, like I said, this one that we're reading about is 175 pounds. The one that we looked at is 179. Laycock's weight when he was really healthy was 175. However, Laycock ended up contracting AIDS and dying. Similar to the way Laycock ended up losing weight and losing his battle to AIDS, the viewers slowly take away pieces of candy until eventually that mound disappears. The gallery or museum will then replenish the mound and the cycle of life and death will continue. So he wanted the viewer to partake in the sweetness of his own relationship with Ross, which was why he chose sweet candy. That's also why I mentioned like the color that I think it was Alba mentioned earlier. The colors are bright and joyful, just like his relationship with Ross. The candy spill also works as an act of communion, but there is a dark side to this particular piece of art because the steadily diminishing pile of cheerfully wrapped candies shows the dissolution of the gay community as society ignored the AIDS epidemic in the 90s and early 2000s, which was when this artwork was created. In the moment that the candy dissolves in the viewer's mouth, the participant also receives a shock of recognition at his or her complacency in Ross's demise. So now knowing that little bit of information there, which is super brief, by the way, if you're interested in this piece, there's an entire book written about it. But knowing that little piece of information, now let's see if we can apply our 5 traits of creativity a little bit better. So we did associating. We are associating here Ross to candy, basically, in a sense. There's other ways that the artist is associating different things, but let's move on to let's do, observing again and see if we can get a little bit better. So what else did Felix Gonzalez Torres have to observe in order to come up with this piece?
The relationship between him and his partner.
Yes, that is one thing. What's another thing that he observed?
His feelings.
Uh-huh.
The way AIDS was affecting Ross.
Yes, that's the big one. The way AIDS was affecting Ross physically, and the way AIDS was in turn affecting Gonzalez Torres, and the way AIDS was affecting the gay community then. So that's the big one. What part of this art piece is networking?
Letting everybody participate in the art and like taking that with him, I guess.
Yeah. That's the big one. Gonzalez Torres was also a big member of the gay community in New York at the time. So he networked with them and he saw the things that they were going through too. But the big one is the idea that the viewer is interacting with the art piece itself. You can apply all of the other traits of creativity to this work as well. But we are going to move on to Romare Bearden. So Romare Bearden is an African-American artist that was part of the Harlem Renaissance. Who here knows what the Harlem Renaissance was?
In culture in New York City, like in the town or like a sector.
So there was a period of time in US history where large amounts of African Americans moved to northern cities, and little communities ended up being formed inside of those cities like Chicago and New York. New York specifically had a community or a borough called Harlem, and Romare Bearden was part of that community. And from those African American communities sprang up an idea of going back to one's roots, specifically African roots. So people started producing a lot of African art again. They started celebrating Africanism, and things like jazz were invented. Famous poets and writers came out because of the Harlem Renaissance, and a lot of famous artists. Romare Bearden was one of them. He did photo montage, which is a really fancy word for a collage. It's a bunch of pictures and clippings pasted together onto a board or a canvas. Romare Bearden himself, my gosh, I wish that these late people would just figure out their lives. I'm not going to help them anymore. That's their own problem. You have seen my patience wear out for late people now. So he himself studied and observed, remember one of our key traits of creativity, the community of Harlem very closely. He took pictures of it. He networked with the people in it. And he used those observations and networking to create what he considered to be a collage of what his city and his society looked like. Let's look at this particular image. Rocket to the Moon is one of his more famous ones. Anna, did you have a question? No? Then I am going to mute you so that we don't have feedback. Okay. All right. So how else can we apply those traits of creativity to Romare Bearden's works? Go step by step, one by one if you need to.
Can you repeat the question?
See if we can go through those 5 traits of creativity, starting with associating and analyze the artwork. So you can tell us how he associated.
Yeah, there's a lot of like politics and stuff.
Yeah, so he associated by combining a whole bunch of different images together. He combined a lot of things. So there's a lot of associating going on. I already told you observing and networking. He observed the community he lived in and networked with all the people he lived with. How did he experiment?
Being like actually one of those people that are on the streets or whatever during those times.
Anyway, yeah. What's another way?
Different colors and stuff?
No. Do artists just throw together stuff willy-nilly?
No, everything has a reason.
Yes, so every single bit on there has a reason. He experimented and played with those images until he got the exact composition that he wanted. Good. I don't know who said that, but you are exactly right.
It was Elba.
Thank you. Moving on to another type of creativity. Like I mentioned at the beginning, normally we focus only on formal art. However, occasionally we will look at outsider art in this class. Outsider art being art produced by people that have little to no formal training. such as quilt making, Native American art, and children's art. Those are all considered outsider artworks. My gosh. Another example of an outsider artwork, go away, is Nuestro Pueblo, or Our Town, created by Simon Rodia. So if you ever go to Watts, California, and you have the opportunity to see this, you are very, very lucky. It is a 100 feet tall sculpture, basically, created by Simon Rodia. Simon Rodia never went to art school. He has no formal architectural training at all. He would come home from work every day and compile a bunch of found objects using homemade concrete, as in not real concrete, but stuff that he just mixed together and stuck. And he made these gigantic towers right in his backyard using found tiles, broken glass, and things like that. Yeah, you guys gotta keep muted or else we're gonna have feedback. And it's hard to understand. So this is kind of an example of what it looks like in color. So it's a lot of different mosaic tile pieces and glass and found trash, basically. And like I said, all of this is made using a concocted concrete. It's not real concrete. It's stuff that he mixed together, and it was sticky, so he used it. When he worked on this, by the way, until he died. So if you notice, the date of working on it was from 21 to 54. Marissa, did you have a question?
Yes, I was gonna ask, is that like a form of mixed media or no?
Yeah, this is mixed media. Very good. If you notice, it says right here, mixed media. I'm glad you
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
it. No, because people don't notice it. And I don't think to mention it because I'm used to it. So I'm glad you raised your hand and said that. Yeah, this is mixed media.
What is it mixed with?
That's what I was gonna ask too.
Yeah, so like I said, he would walk to and from work every day, and he'd pick up trash and junk along the way, and then he would bring it home and put it on this, and it's not concrete, because like concrete is generally a building material, but he couldn't afford concrete, so it's like a mixture of sand and glue and water, not really construction material there. So whenever Rodia ended up passing away, the city claimed his house, and they were planning on tearing down this sculpture because it was not up to code, because it did not use real construction materials at all. Luckily, there was an actor at the time who had the money to purchase the property and invested in hiring architects to actually make it structurally sound and up to code. So we still have it today. And those same traits of creativity can be applied to this as well. In fact, everything that we look at can have those traits of creativity applied to it. You just got to think about how. Moving on to some more outsider art, we have a work by the Philadelphia Wireman right here. The Philadelphia Wireman is called the Philadelphia Wireman because no one knows who it is. In the 1970s, someone found in an alley a whole bunch of these small sculptures of random objects, which once again, this is another mixed media work. Random objects like a watch, bottle cap, nail, drawing, paper, and wire all wrapped together. A lot of them were found in a dumpster. So no one really knows who the Philadelphia Wireman is, but all of the sculptures ended up in a gallery. So they're famous. They're probably dead though. Most people think that it's someone was cleaning out someone's house after they died and threw them all away. Retablos can also be applied to those 5 traits of creativity. And I'm going to pick up speed now because we spent a lot more time than we were supposed to on that first part. Even children's drawings can go through the 5 traits of creativity. Literally everything can go through that if you try hard enough. Some other types of art that we will be looking, well, not other types, but the types of art that we're going to be looking at and studying in this class are representational is the first one, and then abstract and organic is the other one. So representational art just means it is trying to depict things as realistically as possible. A great way to do representational art is to take a picture of something, because nothing is more realistic than a picture. Figurative art is when you are using the human form as the primary subject in representational art. Subjects are the main objects being depicted in representational art. By the way, these are just key terms. That's why they're in bold. Which I'm saying, by the way, they're kind of important. They may or may not be on a test. Usually my quizzes and tests have vocabulary mostly, or whatever we spend the majority of time on. And trompe-l'oeil is a fancy French word that just means fools the eye. So that means it's a really realistic looking painting or image like this one here. This is Harnet's A Smoke Backstage. So really realistic representational painting of a pipe with some tobacco, a newspaper, and matchsticks. By the way, I'm just now realizing that I forgot to mention something. It's not super important, but if you notice, all of these images do have a little caption underneath. At the beginning of the caption is always the artist's name, followed by the title of the artwork, the date the artwork was made, the medium, so what it was made with, and the dimensions and where it can be found now. So yeah, you will find that on pretty much everything except for the one that we're about to look at next. I think I might have put it on it. Yeah, so this one was going to have it. Another example of representational art is René Magritte's This Is Not a Pipe. If you want to say it in French, you can. The French title's right here, La Trahison des Images, The Treachery of Images, also known as This Is Not a Pipe, from 1929. René Magritte is a surrealist artist. We'll talk about what that is in the future. And this is an oil on canvas artwork. So this is just a painting with oil being the medium, oil paint specifically. And this one's fun. René Magritte is always very fun because he's a little cheeky with his artworks. Daniel, is this a pipe? Yes or no?
Looks like a pipe, but at the same time, it could probably be like a doorknob or something, but it has a symbol, because if you look carefully, like all the way to the back, it doesn't seem to have like a piece for the mouth, so it could be something.
Yeah, right here.
It is a piece.
Oh.
Alba, is that a pipe?
Yes, ma'am.
Eileen, is that a pipe?
I want to think yes.
Yes, it is.
Who says that's not a pipe?
Me, Selena.
Why not?
I studied a little bit French in high school, and I can understand some of the words.
The title says The Treachery of Images, This Is Not a Pipe. So the title says it's not a pipe, but you guys all say it is a pipe. So I'm confused now. Why would this not be a pipe?
Because it's art?
Because it's painting. It's not a pipe, it's a painting of a pipe. You get it?
Is it to blow bubbles?
No, it's a painting. It can't be a pipe, it's a painting. You can't use it for smoking.
Oh.
That one's just fun. I like to spend a little bit of time on that one, a little extra time because it's fun. It's a little comedy. Renee Magritte does a lot of paintings like that where they have a little bit of comedy behind them. We're going to come across several artists that do stuff like that. You'll see someone later on doing something similar with chairs. They'll have a actual chair, a painting of a chair, and the definition of a chair. But the title is 1 and 3 chairs because there's only one actual chair, but there's 3 chairs there. But yeah, so you'll see that a lot, that artists are kind of cheeky. Here's another example. This is Beldner's This Is Definitely Not a Pipe. So he copied Renee Magritte's Treachery of Images, but it's definitely not a pipe because that is actually dollar bills sewn together. So yeah, you'll see that a lot. And you'll also see things like this where artists will take from other artists that came before them and are inspired by them, which will be important for us to remember later on. Another type of art that we're going to be looking at is abstract art. Abstract art has no reference at all to natural objects. Sometimes it can have once signified a natural object, but it has gone so far away from it that it's super abstract now, like Janet Eckelman and her sculpture at the beginning. It was supposed to represent a saguaro cactus, but it didn't look like one at all. It was abstract. Yeah, abstract has been around for forever. It's like the oldest art form. For example, the chief's stool here, you'll see it in cave paintings and geometric pottery patterns from the BCE era. So it's one of the older forms of art. We're going to also look at it in a way of abstracting an actual object. So a lot of artists, when abstraction became really popular in the 1900s, they didn't start off just deciding to do it one day. They slowly worked their way towards it. So this is Theo van Doesburg's cow. This is a slightly more abstract version of a cow. This is an even more abstract version of a cow. This is still a cow, but it's really, really abstract. Easier way to see the transition is with Piet Mondrian. Piet Mondrian ends up inventing this style right now, which is called de stijl, which translates to the style. But he starts off painting trees in a fauvist style, which just means using bright colors. Then he slowly goes into a more cubist style of painting a tree, and eventually he'll end up with this, which is very abstract. Very, very abstract. Abstract just means no longer really referencing an object. It's supposed to, but it's not really. Non-representational art means that it is not representing anything that would be able to be seen in real life, such as trying to draw music. Music is not seen, it's heard. So it's a little hard to represent something that you hear but don't see. A great example of an artist trying to do that is right here with Vasily Kandinsky. Vasily Kandinsky was really interested in trying to portray music with colors and shapes. So this is one of his compositions. If you're familiar with music at all, you'll recognize that a lot of musical pieces are titled with the title of composition, whatever it is. Compositions. Moving on, other examples of non-representational art here. Here's some more non-representational. Specifically, these geometric patterns are considered non-representational art. They aren't representing anything at all. It's a geometric pattern. Now, moving on to a more complex subject, which is the difference between looking and seeing something. If you are looking at something, that means you're studying it in a mechanical or goal-oriented way. If you're seeing something, then you're looking beyond the actual form of the artwork and you're looking into the ideas and the feelings and the memories attached with it. So earlier when we were studying the Felix Gonzalez Torres candy spill, we started off just by looking at it. We're like, okay, it's a pile of candy. And then later on, we looked at it by seeing specifically the thought and time and care that went behind that artwork. We went beyond what it actually was. So, Eileen, can you unmute and tell me what you think this looks like?
I'm not sure.
Someone else unmute and tell me what they think this looks like.
It kind of looks like what's supposed to be a person sitting down.
Yeah, that's what normal people always say. Either they say, I don't know, which is what Eileen said. I get that one a lot. And I get it looks like a person or something. That one a lot too. So looking at it, it looks like a person. But if we actually see it, we see that it's technically pepper, an exposed photograph of a bell pepper that is slowly disintegrating and going bad. Micah's laughing. So
to me, it looks like a vest.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I didn't even see another pepper either.
Yeah, I know. I'm always I forget that this picture exists a lot of times. So every time I get to this slide, I'm a little surprised because I always forget it's here. Like, oh, it's the pepper that looks like a person. I always think it's like someone that's hugging someone else or something.
Yeah, that's
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but it's actually the artist did played with the photograph techniques and lighting and exposure times and different chemicals in order to get that kind of effect to exist on the pepper. So yeah, we looked at it and we actually saw it. And once again, like I mentioned with Janet Eckelman's piece, everyone sees something different, which we definitely noticed with that one. Everyone saw something different. I'd like to meet the one person that actually thinks that looks like a pepper right off the bat, though. Okay, another more complex topic is form and content. So it's very similar to the last two topics that we just talked about, looking and seeing. Form is more along the lines of looking, if we're going to compare the two. And content is more in line with seeing. So the form is just the materials, color, shape, and line, and what was used to make the art piece. The content is the actual meaning of the work of art. So a great example of form versus content is here. So the form of this piece is marble and a male and a female. The content is two romantic lovers in an embrace. Now let's look at Brancusi's The Kiss. It's the same exact title. So the form is a piece of limestone. The content is a piece of limestone that is forever connected for the rest of eternity. That's literally what Brancusi was going for there. He just wanted to look like stone was going to be connected forever. Yeah. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit to iconography, which is our last term in this chapter. Iconography is going to come up a lot in this class. Iconography just means symbolism. So using symbols and motifs that people are used to seeing in artwork over and over and over again. The main time periods that use a lot of iconography are the Renaissance period and pop art. The Renaissance period primarily focuses on biblical stories. So in a second, we're going to look at a whole bunch of work and see if you can pick out the biblical characters in the work, because you probably can pick out most of them. And with pop art, you'll know those. Those are easy. Other time periods and cultures also use iconography and symbolism, but it's a little bit harder for us to grasp it since we're more familiar with Western culture over here in America. But yeah, so I'm going to skip to different ones. Let's start with this one. So the Renaissance piece by Raphael. This is called the Madonna of the Meadow, and it is a painting, oil paint on canvas. Let's see if someone can figure out who this is. Anyone? Who's the lady?
Is it supposed to be Mary?
Yeah. See, you're not from the 1500s, and yet you still know. That's iconography. It's using familiar symbols and just knowing right away who's who. Typically in Renaissance paintings, Mary will be depicted with a blue cloak or some sort of a blue fabric around her. So knowing that the woman is Mary, who is the baby that she's holding, probably?
Baby Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yep, that is Jesus. The tougher one is the other baby. Unless you're really, really, really good at biblical iconography, he's tougher. He's wearing an animal skin and carrying a staff. If we were born in the Renaissance, then every single one of us would know, because he's wearing an animal skin and carrying a staff, that that is actually Jesus's cousin, John the Baptist. That one's harder. So yeah. Another example of iconography from the Renaissance period, same deal. She's wearing a blue cloak. That's probably Mary. This guy, probably Jesus. This guy's wearing an animal skin and carrying a staff. That's John the Baptist. And this thing has wings, so it's probably an angel. Iconography is pretty easy. This is the same deal. Mary, Christ, some saints, and some angels. Now, this one is an example of iconography and pop art. What is this? Anyone? What is this?
Soup, can of soup.
This is a soup.
Yeah, soup.
Yeah. So this is Andy Warhol's Campbell's Soup Can. We'll be talking a lot about Andy Warhol this year because he's kind of famous, you know. But pop art is all about choosing images that are easily digestible by the masses, such as everyone being able to recognize a Campbell's Soup Can. Who is this?
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
Damn it.
We're not from that time period, but we know that's Marilyn Monroe. This is another example of pop art. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a 5-minute break. So be back at 7:02 and we will start the next section. If you have any questions about section 1 in the meantime, I will be on here to answer them. I'm going to try and help those people that can't get on. Okay, so everyone should be back after their little break. Our last section went over the topic of what is art. This next section is going to be going over the purposes of making art. So why would an artist even make art in the first place? We're going to start off this section by doing another Padlet with a different question. This question is going to be, what is one purpose or function for creating art? Just like the last one, I'm going to put up a QR code and I'm going to be posting it in the chat. Whichever one you prefer to use is fine. I don't particularly care. Both of them get you there. And there's only one question on this Padlet, so it shouldn't take you too long. I've been meaning to ask, there's an unknown user in here. Who is that? So that I can mark you present.
It's probably me because I can't access the mic through my laptop, but I access it through my phone, so I'm logged into both.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. That's weird.
I'm sorry.
That makes sense. No, it's fine.
It is very. My laptop's mic is not working, so I had to get on my phone as well.
I get it. It's fine. No, I was just making sure I didn't mark someone absent.
Okay.
A way of communicating to share what they have in their imagination. Yeah. To express how one feels. Yeah. Those are all good answers so far. This is another like opinion question though, so it's not going to be wrong no matter what you write, and it's anonymous, so you've got nothing to lose. Passion, to challenge one's way of thinking. Yeah. Expression, vision, and inspiration. These are all really good. Reach to the spectator, make them understand the meaning of their inspiration through the art piece. That one's good. Yeah. These are all really good. Yeah, so every single one of you guys are correct to commemorate some beloved person. Yeah, that's one of them too. So everything that you guys are writing are correct, and they will fall under our purposes and functions presentation that we're about to go over in some way, shape, or form. So technically, there are 6 specific purposes or functions that art serves. There's art for delight, which just means enjoyment of the artist or the person. There's art for commentary, which means that they're trying to make someone understand what they think or share information. There's art for worship and ritual, which I think is a little self-explanatory. There's art for commemoration, which is generally in remembrance of someone or something. There's art for persuasion, which means you're trying to persuade someone to think something. And there's art for self-expression, which I think is also self-explanatory. So those are the 6 purposes and functions of creating art. And every single one of your answers fits under at least one of those. With these purposes and functions of art, the artwork themselves could fall under more than just one of these categories, meaning that it's interchangeable. So art can be made for delight and for commentary, or for worship and for commemoration. It doesn't fall under just one singular thing sometimes. So keep that in mind as we go through. Particular vocabulary words that you guys are going to want to know are aesthetics. Aesthetics is a fancy word that just means what you personally see as beautiful. Everyone considers different things beautiful or pleasing to the eye. Certain people might think symmetry is extremely pleasing to the eye. Other people might think colors are really pleasing to the eye. Everyone has their own preference, including the artists themselves. Yes. Someone have a question? Okay. Idealism means trying to represent a person or object from the ideal standpoint. So not realistically, but as ideal as possible. Meaning, let's take a contemporary example. I mentioned over the last section, like Instagram models. Instagram models Photoshop their pictures like crazy. So it's not realistic, but it's an ideal image of themselves that's been Photoshopped. Another example of idealism is, let me go forward for a little bit. This during the Greek classical era was the ideal male form. Generally a young man in his 20s that was in peak athletic condition. And during the Renaissance, this was the ideal female form. Of course, those standards don't exactly fit us today, and our aesthetics have changed. And people have different aesthetics. So yeah, that's just how that works. Let me go back for a little bit, even though I don't think I need to. No, I went over all that. I just said it. So like I was mentioning, people have different aesthetics. Some people think symmetry is really great. Some people love color. Some people like things like monochromatic paintings. Monochromatic paintings just mean it's all done in one color tone. For example, James Abbott McNeill Whistler's Nocturne Blue and Gold. Whistler experienced fireworks for the first time in London on the Battersea Bridge, and he thought that they were glorious and beautiful, and he wanted to capture their beauty in painting format, and this was the end result. Most people didn't like it, but Abbott thought it was gorgeous. That's just an example of everyone having different aesthetics. So like I just mentioned, the definition of beauty varies across cultures, it varies across people, it varies across time periods. Generally, with artworks, things that people find pleasing are things with symmetry and patterns, or things with complementary colors, such as red and green. This also has a lot of symmetry to it too. And these are all by the way. Or like I mentioned, things with a lot of symmetry. So this is an actual car that Orozco cut in half and put back together. It's almost symmetrically perfect, except there's no mirror on this side. Other people might think that this is more aesthetically pleasing than the car. Everyone has different standards for beauty. This is Kae-Suk Gyum's Dancing Electric Blue from 2011. This is a bunch of beads on wires that hang from the ceiling, and since it's from a wire, it spins like a ballerina. So yeah, it depends on your preferences. Just like some people prefer cars more and some people prefer, I don't know, pretty things. I don't know, dancing, ballet. I don't know what you would consider that, clothes. So that was Art for Delight. Art for Delight is pretty simple. It's just things that look pretty to you. Whatever you consider to be pretty is Art for Delight. Sometimes it's whatever the artist considers to be pretty or aesthetically pleasing. So Art for Delight is really simple. We're going to go into something a little more complicated now, which is art as commentary. Art as commentary generally is art that's made to account for something that the artist actually witnessed themselves, a specific event. It doesn't have to be a historical event. The first example that we're going to look at is a historical event, but it generally is whatever the artist themselves witnessed and they want to create. Who knows who Napoleon is? If you do, can you unmute and tell us who or what he did? Napoleon. Who is Napoleon?
Didn't he conquer most of Europe?
Yeah, he tried to conquer Europe. That was his main goal in life. He almost succeeded until he tried to conquer Russia during the winter time. A fun fact, there's only been one people group that has ever successfully conquered Russia in the winter time, and that was the Mongols. Alexander the Great tried, he failed. Napoleon tried, he failed. Hitler tried, he failed. No one's really been able to do it. But that's a side note for any random history buffs in here that like to know that information. Goya himself witnessed Napoleon's conquering tendencies while he was living in Spain firsthand, and he recorded the trials and tribulations that the Spanish people dealt with during Napoleon's conquering phase. And he created a series of prints, and those prints end up culminating into a painting seen here called The 3rd of May, 1808. So it was, the title's 1808, as in this particular event occurred on May 3rd, 1808. It was painted in 1814, so several years later. This is always a really fun painting to study because it uses a lot of specific techniques. But this is commemorating the memory that Goya had of Napoleon's troops yanking unarmed civilians out of their beds and out of their homes in the middle of the night and killing them. This was done to people that were protesting against Napoleon conquering Spain. So this one, like I said, I like to spend a little bit of time on this one because it uses a lot of special techniques that we're going to talk about next week. But to start off, who can unmute and tell me who the main character is in this painting and how you know it?
Probably the guy in white, maybe?
Yeah, it's the guy in the white, and you know it because he's the guy in the white. So this particular painting uses something called chiaroscuro, which is extreme lights, like this guy's shirt, and extreme darks, like everything around him. So he basically has a spotlight on him, which is what chiaroscuro means. And that helps to create drama and to focus the viewer's attention to the main focal point, which is this guy. Another fun thing that this uses is perspectives, linear perspectives specifically, that takes the viewer's eyes along lines, and all of those lines, specifically here, the guns point to this guy. So even if you were looking over here, eventually your eye would end up back over to him. If we could actually see this painting in person, it's quite large. and you'd be able to see that the man wearing white has stigmata on his hands. Stigmata are little holes, and that's a form of iconography. What other famous historical figure would have holes in his hands and have his hands up?
Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, this guy is supposed to represent Jesus. Jesus was an innocent person that was murdered in biblical history, and Goya is trying to reference that in the fact that these innocent civilians are being killed. And now my cat is crying because we needed another distraction. Yay. Okay, moving on. Stop. To another example of art for commemoration. We're going to skip Bert Morisot and go on to, stop it, Gustave Courbet's A Burial at Ornans. So once again, art for commemoration is just something that the artists themselves experienced and wanted to make an account of. This is pretty simple. Gustave Courbet went to the funeral of his great uncle and he wanted to record it. Did I say art for commemoration? Art for commentary. My gosh. But this is technically also art for commemoration. He's remembering his great uncle. But we're under art for commentary. So he's making a comment on the account that he saw, which was his great uncle's funeral. Even if you didn't know the title, you would know that it's a funeral because there's priests, there's a hole in the ground, and there's a bunch of people crying in the background. Another example of art as commentary is the Occupy LA mural right here. So this particular unknown graffiti artist was making a commentary in 2011 on the federal bank issues and the housing crisis that was happening. A lot of people were losing their houses, specifically veterans. So he was making a comment on the federal bank at that time. Once again, he was living through that, so he was making an account of it. This could also, of course, fall under art for persuasion. He's trying to persuade the public that the federal bank is evil. But yeah. Our next purpose and function of art is art and worship and ritual. We're more acquainted with religious art in Western religions. However, other religions also have art, so it's important to remember. Our first example of art in religion is a stained glass window, which is pretty interesting. Stained glass windows were invented during the medieval era. In the medieval era, the churches wanted to let in more light because light referenced heaven. So they invented stained glass windows in order to bring in that heavenly light into the churches themselves. The churches also got a lot taller too during the medieval era, just because they wanted to reach up towards heaven. Another example of religious art is Michelangelo's Pietà. Pietà translates to pity. This is, of course, an image of Mother Mary holding the dead Christ's body on her lap. Another example of religious art, once again by Michelangelo, is the Sistine Chapel. We're going to spend a lot of time focusing on every single one of these artworks, by the way, when we get to the art history section. Right now, we're just using them as examples of religious art in case you're worried that I'm going too fast. So on the ceiling right here with the Sistine Chapel are all of the Old Testament stories. And on the walls, you have stories from the New Testament. And up here on the front, you have a large work called The Last Judgment. The Last Judgment is supposed to be from Revelations. It was done at the very end of the Renaissance period, though. So when we do get a chance to study this further, you'll notice that the styles in the painting have changed, which I always find really interesting. because these ones on the wall and the ceiling were done at the beginning of the Renaissance period, and then the Last Judgment was done at the end. So the style is different. Same artist, different style. Like I mentioned, other religions also use art as a form of symbolism, such as the Buddhists using Zen gardens, or the Alaskan Inuits using masks to try and reach spirits. Or right here is a contemporary example of religion. This is Shanghuan seeds. Shanghuan is Buddhist. This particular artwork is using the medium of incense ashes, charcoal, and resin. Resin acts as like the glue to bind the charcoal and the ashes to the canvas. Is anyone on here familiar with Buddhism and knows anything about it? It might just be me. I don't know. Sometimes someone knows. I didn't know anything about it until I got older. So in Buddhism, frequently you will, well, not frequently, but sometimes you'll get the opportunity to go to a Buddhist temple and pray. While you're praying, incense is frequently lit. The incense acts as a way to basically carry your prayers to the heavens. And the ashes themselves hold on to your prayers. So this is considered a religious piece because it uses and repurposes those prayers into a everlasting piece. So those prayers are continuing on in this image. Normally incense ashes, once the little trays become full, they'll be thrown away. He has repurposed them and given them new life, or a continued life. Same with this sculpture. This is also incense ashes used to make a gigantic Buddha head, which is slowly deteriorating because it's ash, and ash tends to blow away. And we're going to keep going on to art for commemoration. So art for commemoration generally is done in remembrance or memory of someone or something. For example, remembering the death of someone important, or just remembering a patriotic event. So we're about to look at an image of the death of General Wolfe, but I guess first we're going to look at the Taj Mahal. So the Taj Mahal, I asked you guys on last week why it was made. A lot of you guys thought it was for religion, which is common. It's a common misconception because it does kind of have similar architecture to a mosque. But it was actually done in remembrance of Shah Jahan's favorite wife when she died in childbirth. He wanted to give her a resting place that looked like the descriptions of paradise. So here you have the lush gardens with a long infinity pool that mirrors the architecture in the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal itself is made using a lot of really precious materials. I'm sure that someone will end up choosing this particular architectural piece for their presentation later on, so I'm not going to talk about it too much just because I don't want to ruin their presentation for everyone. But yeah, another example of art for commemoration is a patriotic event, such as this piece right here, the death of General Wolfe. So it looks like it's commemorating him. Technically it is. This is General Wolfe right here. However, the piece overall is a celebration of British victory during the French and Indian War. So the French and Indian War was a war fought between the French and the British. There were Indians on both sides helping out. And what happened is that some Indians and colonists told the British general, General Wolfe, that there was a secret trail that they could use to surround the French troops in Quebec. And they used that trail and surrounded the French troops in Quebec and ended up winning the French and Indian War. So this image right here actually commemorates the British victory at Quebec. It also commemorates the death of General Wolfe. So it has two functions because the head general did die there. And this one's another fun painting that you can always figure out who the main character is because of all the lines and the fact that he's got white on and everything. Another example of art for commemoration is war memorials, specifically the Vietnam Veterans War Memorial. Has anyone seen this in person? No one's seen this one? I haven't either, so that's why I was asking. Occasionally there's someone that's seen it and I get really jealous and excited. So normally in US war memorials, we depict people in the middle of battle acting extremely heroic, kind of like this image right here, very like in the heat of the moment. However, this particular war memorial does not do that. It is more a reflection on the loss of life. So what Maya Lin did, by the way, she was like 20 or 21 when she made this. What this is they took out, basically they made a giant scar into the earth and dug out around it. And they put in polished black granite. And on that polished black granite, they etched the names of every dead and missing American soldier that either died or disappeared during the Vietnam War in chronological order. When you're reading the names, you yourself are reflected in the shiny granite to just remind you that these people died for you. It's a very somber war memorial, which is quite different from the other war memorials that exist at the Washington, D.C. Mall. You'll see the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima over around here too. Most of them are very heroic and praiseworthy. However, this one is very somber and kind of sad. But that also keys into the fact that most Americans were not too happy with the Vietnam War. So yeah, but that's a deeper reading on that. So once again, art for commemoration. Our next purpose for art is art for persuasion. Art for persuasion is always trying to influence the viewer's opinions. A great example of art for persuasion are ads and commercials trying to get you to buy stuff. Older example of that would be this image of the Emperor Augustus of Rome. So he was the first emperor of Rome. Rome was extremely large when he was emperor. And every single thing about this statue is trying to persuade the viewer that he is the best emperor ever, and no one will ever be better than him. So you see him wearing a soldier's uniform here with armor. That is to symbolize to the viewer that he is strong and he is a good military leader, and he will give you victories in war. He has a finger up in the air to persuade the viewer that he is able to dictate and lead, particularly a government. Keep in mind at this time, Rome was heading towards a more republic style of government, so he needed to be able to dictate leadership. And the weird part about this image is that down towards the bottom, you see a little winged baby riding a dolphin. That doesn't really fit to us today, but if we lived back in the 1st century, we would know that that little baby is actually Cupid. And if we knew anything about the Emperor Augustus, we would know that he claimed to be related to Cupid. Does anyone on here know who Cupid's mom was? Does anyone know their mythology? Who is Cupid's mother? No one? No one knows who Cupid's mother is? Cupid's mother is the goddess of beauty, Aphrodite, or Venus, depending on which mythology you're going with, Greek or Roman. It's the same person. So his mom is Aphrodite. Aphrodite is the daughter of Zeus, which is like the head honcho god. So basically, Emperor Augustus here is claiming that he is related to the gods. So he himself is a god. He's trying to persuade the viewer that he's a god. So he's a great leader. He's strong. He's victorious. He's mighty. And he's basically a god. That's what he's trying to persuade people with this piece. And yeah, there was a lot of symbolism in that one. A lot of iconography. Another example of art for persuasion is the Palace of Versailles. So Louis XIV had the Palace of Versailles built, and he ended up eventually moving the head of the government to Versailles from Paris, which ended up upsetting a lot of people. And then Louis XV moved it back to Paris, and Louis XVI ended up moving it back to Versailles and ended up getting his head cut off. But anyways, so the Palace of Versailles, if you've ever seen pictures of it, is decked out from top to bottom in gold and marble and extremely expensive materials. It's huge. It has a really fancy garden. This was basically just to persuade opposing countries and nations that France was extremely rich and powerful. Louis XIV was trying to make people think he was rich. He was persuading people that France was extremely wealthy and not to pick fights with them because they had a lot of money. Another example of art for persuasion is by Ambrogio Lorenzetti, his Effects of Good Government in the City. This is a fresco. A fresco is a painting done on a wall. We're going to talk about what kinds of frescoes there are later on in painting. But this basically portrays to the public in a public space. This is in what today would be considered like the city hall. And it shows what a good government would look like to anyone that walks into the city hall of Florence. And on the opposite wall of this would be the effects of bad government. And in the effects of bad government, Lorenzetti put things like murder, rape, and theft. And the people of Florence walked through City Hall and said, well, we're definitely not the bad one, so we must be the good one. Okay. And our last form or purpose of art is art for self-expression. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this one's pretty self-explanatory too. It's artists making arts to convey their own personal thoughts and feelings. Keep in mind that all of these artworks can fit under more than one category. For example, this particular painting could fit under art for persuasion just as easily as it fits under art for self-expression. This is Nussbaum's self-portrait with Jewish identity card. So it could be persuading the viewer that these horrible atrocities are happening to people in Nazi Germany, but it can also fall under self-expression because Nussbaum is trying to express his fear and anxiety in being a Jewish person in the 1940s. So he was scared for his life in the 1940s and he was trying to express that. Another example of self-expression, which doesn't have much to do to anything deep, is once again another Vasily Kandinsky. This is the same artist that I mentioned earlier that tries to express musical sound in painting format. So yeah, that was really, really fast, but I was trying to go fast because I want to go over a couple of important things before we stop for today. Are there any questions about the purposes of art? Anything at all? Once again, I went kind of fast and I am recording this, so if you need to watch it back again, you can. No questions, okay. So I have a couple of announcements. The first one's simple, and that is the fact that Midland College does have an honors program. If you're interested in joining it, reach out to me and I can get you the form on that. There's a lot of perks that come with being in the honors program. So I would definitely recommend it if you're interested. And the other thing is your group projects. So I keep getting a lot of messages about that. Normally, I wouldn't start your group projects until after we've gone over the censorship section. But since so many people are so interested in starting it now, I am going to go ahead and let you guys get started. But before you go ahead and start doing it, I want you to understand what the topic of censorship actually means in art. So can someone unmute and tell me what it means to censor something? Specifically, what does it mean to censor?
To deem something, to deem an art as like offensive. Something like that.
Not always. And it's not just art either. So on like a social media platform, if you post something with nudity or a lot of cussing, what's going to happen to it?
They're going to blur.
It'll get shadow banned or blocked or taken down. That's censorship. So censorship is the removing of something from public view. That's what censorship is. So before you guys can start that project over censorship, you have to understand what that word means specifically. It means to completely remove from public consumption or view. So your project asks the question of whether or not art should be censored. When we are talking about art, we're talking about formal art, so art that would be shown in a gallery or a museum. Should that be censored? Yes or no? That's up to you. I have put you guys into groups. They are predetermined groups. As a group, you must come to a consensus, meaning an agreement, on whether or not you think art should be censored. So you all have to agree if art should be censored or art should not be censored. There is a third option. The third option is harder. The third option is that you pick a middle ground stance, meaning you don't pick a side. However, with the third option, if you go with it, you're going to have an extra step. That extra step will be to try and solve the issue. The issue being of people that want art censored and people that don't want art censored. You have to figure out how to please everyone. So that's why I said there is a third option, but it's the hardest one, and that is the middle ground.
But I'm sorry. The question is like censor in general galleries, because obviously kind of nudity or art like that, you don't want to put it on a children museum. Like we're talking about big museum for everybody, or
for everyone, yeah. So like art museums, because children's museums wouldn't be art museums. We're talking about art museums. That's a good question.
Is there like a right or wrong answer, or is it just kind of?
It's your opinion. Do I have your own opinion? Yes, but you're allowed to have your own opinion as well. If you want to read about the group project, it is under the modules section. It's also under the files on Canvas. I am going to read you the actual project description right now, just because I feel like a lot of people probably haven't read it yet. So the big question is, should artists, museums, and galleries be allowed to exhibit what they want, or should society decide and dictate what is appropriate to be on display? For this assignment, you will need to tell me what you and your group think I had a typo there, man. Think about showing art in public. According to your own opinions, you may decide if you think art needs to be censored or if artists should have total freedom. Perhaps you believe that there is a middle ground to allow editing artwork or limit exhibition locations and funding. Based on your group's opinions, you will need to come up with an agreement on which stance you will take, and there's a lot of typos in this. Are you in support of it? So meaning that yes, you are allowed to have your own opinion, but, and here's the big but, because if you don't do this, you're not going to do it right. You need to have facts, preferably statistics, and examples as to why your opinion is correct. Because everyone can have as many opinions in the world, but if you don't have facts and examples to back up your opinion doesn't mean diddly. That is life. Welcome. So for this project, you will need to create a cohesive slide presentation with images and text that help create enough of an impact to support your argument. Everyone in the group must participate in some form or fashion for this assignment. For example, student A did slides 1 through 3, student B did slides 4 through 6, etc. You may also choose to record your slides in a presentation format. If you're more comfortable doing a recording of a video, that's fine. I totally don't mind that. That would make, a video would make things even more exciting and creative. Okay. So easy sites to use if you're wanting to make a video are Loom, which is free, your phone, which is something that you probably already have, Google Meets. You can use a recording feature in Google Meets. Zoom also has a recording feature. Teams is another place that has a recording feature. If you want me to set up a Teams link for you guys, I can. That's if you want to record it. If you're interested on how to do that and you're confused on how to do it, just feel free to ask me and I can help you guys work that out. So far, I don't think anyone's chosen to do a video in my other classes, but if you do, that's fine. Now the big question is, how are we going to do a group project if we're stuck in quarantine? Well, it's actually pretty easy, and I've had people do it a lot of times in the past and no one's had any issues. I created the groups ahead of time in Canvas, and I'll be telling you guys your group members in a second. Your student email is the easiest way to start off contact. If you guys prefer texting each other, that's fine. I also set up some Google Slides for you guys, but if you don't want to use Google Slides, that's fine as well. You're not going to offend me. If you want to use PowerPoint, that's totally fine. I don't care. You guys have total creative freedom when it comes to making your presentation. This is definitely a doable project, even though we're all in quarantine. We have weird hours. Trust me, people have succeeded very well in the past. Keep in mind that you will be grading each other on group efforts and working together cohesively as a group. So if like someone's bossy, someone else might rate them bad, or if someone doesn't do any work at all, they might get a bad rating from you guys. Yeah. So what your group is going to be rated on is a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being best. The topics that you're going to be graded on are your presentation as a whole. Whether you choose to do slides or video is up to you. I don't really care which. The style and cohesiveness. So does it flow or does it look really choppy? Does it look like it was made in like 2 seconds because there's not any images or use of media? Once again, group effort. The length is something that you will be graded on. So it should be at least 10 slides, preferably more. If you're doing a video, it needs to be 10 minutes of talking. And most importantly, your arguments. If you're having issues coming up with arguments and facts and examples to back up your arguments, feel free to reach out to me because my brain is full of them. at this point in time because I keep finding more and more every day. So moving on to actually discussing your groups and who's in what group. So an announcement popped up at 5 p.m. on Canvas that says what your groups are. And it also gives you a link to the Google Slides presentation that I made for you guys. If you want to use that presentation, you can, but you don't have to. You're not going to offend me if you don't. So here are the group names. In group 1 is Beyonce, Brock, Micah, Norman, and Cora. I know that Brock's already kind of started on yours, so you might want to get with him and see what he's done. Group 2 is Alexander, Isabel, Eileen, Liliana, and Marissa. Group 3 is Alba, Daniel, Selena, Jesse, Rosa, and Justa. But Justa has never come to class and she's never responded to any of my emails, so I wouldn't rely on her too much because I don't think she's going to be in this class for much longer. And group 4 is Erica, Anna, Taylin, and Eric. Once again, if you can't remember who your people are, it's under the announcements page in Canvas. But what I want you guys to do for the next 30 minutes is make sure to figure out how to contact each other, whether it be with text messages, a group chat, emails, figure it out while most of you are here, because I think there's only like 3 people missing right now. And preferably pick a argument. So are you going to be pro-censorship, against censorship, or are you going to take the middle ground? And if you type in chat, I will be reading the chat out loud for people that don't have access to the chat so that they know what's going on in there. So yeah, make sure to share each other's information. If you have questions, now would be a good time to ask. This project is not due until the 27th, I believe. So you have quite a while to work on it. But yeah, I wanted to get you started.
It said on your thing that it was due on the 25th.
Okay, you're probably right. I've got a lot of numbers in my head and I'm not good with numbers.
I'm
You're most
going
likely right.
on the date that weekend. I'm leaving the 25th all the way through the 27th.
Okay, so then you're gonna have to work out with your group how you're gonna do that.
Okay.
So once again, right now is the time to be sharing information so that you can talk to each other. I'm not seeing that happening unless you're doing it some other way.
Well, like I said, I don't have the option or doesn't let me get into the chat. So
Okay.
I just gonna share here my name and my phone number and the name of the group so they can add me.
That
and
is
send me, text me so I can make a group or chat and we can contact each other.
That is actually the easiest way, Anna.
So.
Truly is. So anyone that's in group 4 with Anna, text her and she'll set up a group chat. So if you've forgotten, group 4 is Erica, Anna, Taylin's not here, and I don't think Eric's here either. They might be.
On mine, I'm just sending a group like chat on Canvas, and then I put my number in there.
Yeah, that's totally my morning class did that. Yeah, so group 4.
Anna, what was the last digit of your phone number?
Yes.
My number is 432-978-5885. 4877.
Okay, thank you.
And if any of you use or are familiarized with WhatsApp, that's what I always used to do my like groups, so we can share different stuff in there. If not, just tell me what kind of social media, or if you go to college to meet in there, I don't know, because I have presential classes and I have virtual classes, so it's not a big matter.
Group 2, Eileen just posted something in the comments section for you. Norman did as well.
For group 1, I messaged everybody in my team on the inbox on Canvas.
That works for me. That's what we did last semester and it worked fine.
This is Alba. For group 3, I posted not on the meeting section, but on Teams section. I posted my number, so if you guys want, I can make like a group text message. I think that'll be easier. I posted my number.
Yeah, that's what's worked best for the morning classes, is having a group chat going, either on Canvas or via text message. If someone wants to set up a Teams meeting to discuss topics and share their screen so they can work on the slides together, I can set up that meeting for you guys. You just have to tell me what group you're in and when you want that. If you are struggling, and I stress this because my morning classes have been struggling, if you're struggling to come up with arguments and examples and facts, let me know. I can lead you in the right direction, okay? No matter what side you choose, I can lead you in the right direction. Some great websites to use are places like Hyperallergic, which has a lot of documents and news articles on art specifically. In fact, today they just posted an article on tearing down Confederate statues. Tearing down those Confederate statues is a form of censorship. So that would be a good example for someone on a certain side. Marissa said that she sent a group inbox message through Canvas, but she's also got her number in the chat for group 2 if you need it. So I'm going to stick around on here until 8:20, but if you've got all of your stuff sorted out and you are conversing, once again, please pick a side tonight. Before you go to bed, please pick a side. But if you're done on here, then you're done and you don't have to stick around. Unless you've got questions or unless you just want to hang out.